The Navigating Disability podcast often discusses topics including disability, injury, mental health, and mentions of sensitive issues such as trauma and suicide. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care while listening. Welcome to Navigating Disability. Today we're joined by Ellie Cole, Australia's most decorated female Paralympian. After losing her right leg to cancer at age 3, Ellie began swimming as part of her rehabilitation and went on to earn 17 Paralympic medals across 4 games. Beyond the pool, Ellie's a passionate advocate for disability inclusion, representation and accessibility. Ellie has been a powerful voice in campaigns like We the 15 and continues to inspire through public speaking and storytelling. Join us as we explore her journey, advocacy, and the impact of visibility in sport and society. Welcome, Ellie.
Welcome to me. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we were just discussing before that you haven't done many of these podcasts that actually talk about disability. It's mentioned, but it's more about your success in the pool.
Yes, that's correct. Sure. So obviously I've grown up as an athlete. It's what I'm most well known for in the Australian landscape. And whenever I've done any kind of podcast or media, it's very much around, competition time or my athletic endeavors. And I think people ask a couple of questions about my disability. Most of the focus has always been on my achievements in the pool. So I've never really had an opportunity to sit down with people before and to really dive into what it means for me to have a disability and what I've learned about myself, how I've seen the Australian landscape change. I think probably a big part of that reason is because a lot of people are very scared to ask the questions. I think disability confidence, particularly in the generation that are actually doing podcasts, isn't probably where it needs to be. So I'm really excited to have 2 wonderful ladies to talk to today who understand that no question is a bad question when it comes to disability. And yeah, I've kind of been really hungry to do something like this for a long time. So thank you for having me on.
Well, it's our pleasure that we've been able to give you that voice.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about when you were 3? Do you remember that time? Do you remember the before and the after?
No, I don't. So my background of acquiring a disability began when the background story began when I was 2, being diagnosed with cancer, but I actually lost my leg when I was 3. I don't remember anything about that time, but it's been interesting the last maybe 5 years or so that there's almost been a trauma response that's surfaced every now and then when I'm put in environments that remind my body of what it was like to go through chemotherapy at a young age and to go through that hospital procedure at a young age. So my memory tends to block out that time of my life, but my body hasn't been able to. So it's really hard for me to, be at a hospital under fluorescent lights now. It's really hard for me, especially during COVID, to have medical professionals leaning over me with face masks on. Like, it's just something that I don't particularly cope with too well. But I don't remember too much. My family obviously very much do, especially my parents, find that period of time difficult to revisit. But yeah, I don't remember anything about it. I lost my leg at the age of 3, and according to me, that was the very beginning of an amazing journey of becoming a Paralympian and learning a lot about myself having a disability. But I think the best part of reflecting on my life, if we start at the age of 3, is being able to teach other people that don't have a disability, just how superhuman we all are and the special parts that make us so unique, and kind of seeing them opening their minds to the whole experience and being, I think rethinking everything that they have ever thought about themselves. So I really enjoy doing that.
Can I just say it's really interesting, your comments about trauma and the medical environment, because we spoke to someone else today who said very, very similar things. And I don't know if the medical fraternity actually really understand the trauma that you go through as a patient in that environment, and you really don't have any choice.
You're exactly right. I think, especially with young kids, you see young kids going through adversity or a very difficult time in their life, and usually a comment from an adult is, they're kids are resilient, they bounce back from anything. And that's not the case at all. I think, obviously they are resilient because they're not 100%, I suppose, across exactly what's happening at the time. And they don't understand the seriousness or the gravity of a situation. But you will find that kids, anyone really who goes through an experience like that, it does come out in other ways over their life. And sometimes it will surprise them and hit them in a really inconvenient time. You definitely don't come out of any kind of experience like that unscathed, even if you think you have.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think you bluff yourself in thinking that, yeah, I'm good. I'm all good. It's in the past, but it does have a way of creeping up on you and you go, oh, okay, well, I'm not okay. Like that,
Mm,
that really triggered me. And I think so many people that are faced with such challenges at an early age and even as you get older, there is trauma because you're dealing with a medical emergency or a medical condition and you just have to pretty much do what you're told. So it's your choice and control has been taken away from you, so to speak. And I think for a lot of people that can be quite polarizing.
absolutely. I think that was kind of what my experience was like. So suppose when I first discovered that I had carried a little bit of trauma and PTSD from my younger years was when I was going through a different medical experience from being an athlete and needed to get scans done and needed to go back to the hospitals again. And there were a lot of questions that were unanswered. But you're right, that choice and control was completely taken away from me. And before I knew it, I was like unraveling in front of myself and I didn't really understand what was happening. And it was probably the most uncomfortable period of my life that I can remember, like the 2 years that I experienced extreme debilitating anxiety. I could barely leave my house. I was suffering migraines almost daily from this experience. Whilst it was the most uncomfortable experience I've ever had, I now reflect back on it now that I'm on the other side, and I have so much more of an understanding of other people who are going through mental health challenges or going through trauma or PTSD. I always empathize with those people, but I never really experienced it myself or understood what it was like. And now I do. I feel like I am better equipped to be a supporter of people who are going through an experience like that because I know exactly what it feels like. It's probably made me a better person in the long term. So it's just been one of those things where, whilst it was difficult to go through, I am happy that I went through that experience, even though it was awful. And if I think about a lot of experiences that I've had as a person with a disability, I am like, I wish that I hadn't had to go through experiences like that. But on getting to the other side, it does make you a much stronger person and so much more interesting and more creative and resilient and all of these magical things that come with it. So I'm kind of one of those people now that love leaning into adversity, love leaning into things that really challenge me because I've seen the way that you completely change your perspective on life and it makes you a better person, better friend, better partner, better daughter. It's hard, but it's kind of all worth it in the end, even though it's awful to go through.
And
So
I
can I
totally,
ask you,
sorry,
sorry, Kate,
I
you
totally
go.
agree with what you said. I have suffered depression and anxiety in the past, and whilst my husband is very supportive, he will never actually understand what I go through because he's never been through it.
Mm.
So it's really hard to be able to explain it and understand it and support it if you haven't.
No, I agree. I remember trying to explain to my partner what was happening at the time, and she had no idea. And it was honestly like there were moments where I couldn't even drive myself home because I felt that much anxiety that I couldn't breathe and I felt like I was going to have a panic attack just getting in my car. There's no way that anyone will understand what that feels like unless you go through it yourself. And you wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy. But now that I've been through it myself, I can understand if I'm seeing someone who is showcasing any kind of symptom of maybe having a panic attack or going through some extreme anxiety that I can really empathize with them and relate to what they're going through. And I feel like I'm better able to serve that person and trying to help them through the other side. I'm glad I've gone through that experience, but gosh, I'm glad to get to the other side as well.
So what did your childhood look like from the time that you were diagnosed with cancer or from what you can remember? What was your childhood growing up with, one leg and prosthetics and things like that? What did that look like for you?
I was very fortunate actually. I had a pretty picturesque kind of childhood. I grew up in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, and we grew up on this mountain, Mount Evelyn, in a log cabin that my dad had
Oh,
built. It was just beautiful.
amazing.
I was kind of naive to the fact that I was different to everybody else. I have a twin sister, so her and I just took on the world together, and we disappeared into the jungle and built these forts, and we wouldn't come home till well after dark, and it was just a really great childhood. I probably didn't notice my differences really until I went to school, and the teachers, like the adults who had these preconceived ideas of what it was to have a disability, started pushing their agenda on me and what I would be able to participate in and what I wouldn't be able to participate in. And I just wanted to grip into everything. So it was very confusing for me because I'd grown up with my twin sister, and according to me, I was able-bodied. I was able to achieve everything that an able-bodied person could. But then I met these adults when I went to school who thought otherwise, and that was really challenging for me. But if I reflect on my whole childhood as a whole, I would say it was just your average Australian upbringing,
Yeah.
except I had to go to prosthetic appointments every now and then, and my leg would break on me sometimes.
Be
Um,
rough and ready on it.
yeah, but apart from that, we just took the punches as they came and just got on with
And I
it.
love that because it sounds like mum and dad and your family as a whole didn't treat you any different.
No, they
You were
didn't.
Ellie, and it was all systems go. And I
Yeah.
think that's important because you're not different. You just have a different ability, so to speak.
Yes, I was really lucky to have that in my life. And I know that obviously my disability is lower needs, and there are some people that have much higher needs that do need a bit more assistance. I suppose a lot of the advocating from my parents to give me the same opportunities as the child that I was going to school with or the child that I was swimming next to at swimming training. It all really happened behind closed doors, and I didn't see too much of that. But now that I'm older and I ask my parents about what their experience was like parenting a child with a disability, it's a very different story than what my experiences were. So a lot of the advocacy was done without me realizing it, and there is no way that I would have been given those same opportunities back in 1995, 1996 that I would have had if it wasn't for my parents. So I'm very fortunate in that sense. And I've met a lot of parents of people with disabilities. They're the fiercest advocates that you'll ever come across. I don't think you ever want to get on the wrong side of a parent that has a child with a disability.
We
My,
like to call them warrior mums,
I
right,
was just
Kate?
going to
Yeah.
say, my child psychiatrist, I call them the warrior, as in W. Oh, how do you spell it? WAIRR. My psychiatrist calls them the warrior,
Yes.
WORR. And they're both the
Yeah.
same.
Absolutely. I definitely had a warrior mum and a warrior dad and a warrior sister, all of them.
But isn't that just amazing that all of that could be done without you even knowing about it? If you
Yeah,
were to address teachers, adults, medical people, anyone in a room today about what you experienced in prep grade one, grade two, what would you want them to know about your abilities as a disabled person?
if I was addressing a room full of teachers and adults that I came across when I was young, I would probably tell them about the stories that come to mind when I was unintentionally segregated or underestimated, and without them even really realizing the impact that it can have on someone.
They probably thought they were doing the right thing
Yeah.
by you.
Absolutely. Every single person that I've ever met in my whole life has always had good intentions. And I think that's something that's really important to remember. But, when you're a young girl or a young boy growing up in a world where everyone's telling you that you're different every single day, you want to be able to decide what your future looks like, not somebody else. And I think now that I was able to take a lot of ownership on who I was throughout my swimming career. And I think that's why I resonated so quickly with my swimming career is because when I was in a swimming pool, you couldn't even tell that I had a disability. It wasn't until I got out and I put on a prosthetic leg that someone was like, "Hey, she's got one leg." And I think that was really empowering for me because I was able to make my own choice on what kind of athlete I wanted to be. And I wasn't coming across people's preconceived ideas of what it meant to be an athlete with a disability because oftentimes, as I mentioned, people didn't even notice until I got out. And so if I was to address those adults now, remind them that, it's obviously very important to have good intentions, but to make sure that you're always giving that choice, always giving that control into who exactly they want to be. And I can guarantee you that every adult that I came across has probably watched my Paralympic career and has probably learnt so much about what it means to have a disability in Australia. And they probably would approach things very differently. But
They'd be gobsmacked.
they
As
would be, but at the time they were making a decision or making, their ideas about what disability was based on the information that they had at hand. And in 1994, if you opened up a newspaper, if you turn on the television, disability was portrayed to be in a very negative way.
It
And
was,
of course, they're going to make those assumptions based on the media that they were given. But now we have actors, television hosts, movie stars, athletes, politicians, all with disabilities, and it's a very different world. So I can't really hold that against them.
So what would be your best advice for people in the community that just feel stuck in their circumstances and feel like that they can't reach their goals? What would be your best piece of advice for them?
I think it really does all start if you're feeling stuck by changing the narrative that you tell yourself. Instead of seeing my prosthetic as a limitation, I saw it as a part of what made me really unique. And I really leaned into that and embraced the fact that I could bring something different to the table as someone with a disability. And over time, I always knew that it was a strength of mine, but over time, other people began to see that as a real strength as well. And it's not always easy. Sometimes you need help to shift that mindset, but it is possible. So that self-belief is really, really important. Knowing that you do bring something to the table and that it is a real strength to have something that is so different is something that you can never can learn from a textbook. So I think it's really, really important to understand what your value actually is, because historically speaking, people with disabilities have always been devalued. But from what I've seen becoming a Paralympian, from what I've seen about people doing amazing things in our communities with disabilities, it is a real strength and it is a real value. But there are so many people out there that still don't see that part of themselves because they're told otherwise time and time again. That's the advice that I would give to people.
Have you ever felt, has there ever been a time where life was really, really freaking hard and you didn't know if you could overcome it?
I don't think so, to be honest. I've had massive challenges in my life. Everybody does, regardless of whether you have a disability or not. I've always actually, it's probably been another thing that's really around mindset. I've always really embraced the hard times. I get a lot of enjoyment out of facing something that's really, really difficult, thinking that you can't get to the other side. I was touching on my mental health issues that I've experienced before, but knowing that there is, a light at the end or there is another side, but it's almost like a puzzle on how you get there. I find that really enticing, actually. I think I'm a bit sadistic that I love being caught in those hard moments. It is a little bit sadistic.
Look at it. Because I'm a firm believer that no matter what happens, the world's not going to open up and a big black hole's going to suck you in. It's just
Exactly.
not, you're here. So rather than falling down and bowing down to the adversity, let's actually get right in.
Yeah, you never want to bow down to it. You want to jump right in head first.
Yeah.
But I think it takes a lot of people have their confidence shakes when they're going through a tough time. It's almost like if you're going through a really difficult period in your life or you're going through a particular event that's really, really hard, that's when you really start questioning what you are capable of. Can I do this? Can I get to the other side of this? Am I good enough for this? And I think it's really important to remember that everybody has those thoughts. I remember being a really young girl and looking at like the Grant Hackett's, the Ian Thorpes, thinking they were invincible and they were gods, right? Then when I got to that level of swimming myself, I realized, wow, okay, it's actually everybody has these thoughts. Everyone experiences them. It's just a normal part of being human.
And look at Grant Hackett, and this is nothing against him,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
look at the life that he has had. He's had his ups and downs. It's been really bloody hard.
Exactly. So I think acknowledging that it's a normal, common experience to think this way or to go through adversity. Um, but I think, yeah, changing that mindset to this is going to be an amazing challenge for me. You know, this is what's going to test every single skill that I've learnt throughout my whole life to get through the other side. And you pick up more and more skills as you go through it. And then you get to look back on the other side and say, like, wow, I got through this. And this is what I came out of it with. I came out of it with, a better ability to be able to back myself when I didn't. I came out of it with a better perspective than able to serve others with and to help them get through tough challenges. And I think that's the really exciting part. But it is so hard to see that when you're in it.
So what role has the community played in your life? So just, people supporting you and engaging you and things like that. Has it always been a positive experience?
Yeah, it has been. As I mentioned, I had a really strong community in my family when I was first going through my disability back in 1994. There were certainly people that questioned what I was capable of. But as I mentioned, I think all of those assumptions were based on the information that they had at hand at the time. But every single person well, not every single person, but a lot of people that
The
I've surrounded,
majority.
a lot of the people that I've surrounded myself by are people who inspire me to push myself harder or to, I don't know. It's like, you know how important it is for the world to have diversity? I think it's also really important for your community to be diverse in terms of what they can give to you. So I've definitely got people that push me when I need it, but then again, I've got people who pick me up when I'm
Your
crumbling.
big hug when you need it.
I've got people who make me laugh. I've got people who are very philosophical and make me think about different perspectives. I think having a diverse group of people around you all of the time is really, really important. And that's the great thing about community is that everybody brings something different to the table. So yeah, it's super, super important. And I think perspective and differences in perspective are incredibly important as well.
Talk to us about your swimming. So you got into swimming because as part of your rehab when you lost your leg. How did it end up in being a Paralympian, a numerous Paralympians?
That's a good question. It kind of happened by accident, to be honest.
Well, it's a good accident to have, right?
Yes, it is. So I started swimming for rehab, as you mentioned, and then I went through Learn to Swim program with my twin sister and graduated from that. And I actually wanted to become a ballerina at the end of that period because I'd just seen Swan Lake and I loved the beauty of ballet and the perfectionism of ballet. I was like 10 years old and I just honestly loved just how graceful that they were. And I ended up going to one squad session because my mum just asked if I could try it. And if I didn't like it, I didn't have to keep going with it. And my coach at the time went for the Melbourne Demons, which is an AFL team. And I went for the same AFL team.
You've won paid over. There you go.
Yeah. And it was like the sliding doors moment where if he had gone for a different football team, I probably would never have gone back again. But so that was accident number one. Accident number two was around being a swimmer with a disability in an able-bodied program and just wanting to prove everybody that I could still achieve exactly what they were. So we would be given these sessions. They would be almost impossible to finish. And every week you would see yourself getting closer and closer and closer to that big ambition of completing the set. And I always wanted to be the first person to get there kind of thing. I always wanted to be the fastest kicker in my squad. I just wanted to be the best. And I ended up becoming the best swimmer in my squad. And I think because of that.
I just clarify, you were in an able-bodied squad?
Yeah.
So generally no one else there with a disability, and you were doing exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't have had it any other way. I'm very fortunate, as I mentioned, that I didn't necessarily needed to have any modifications made to the way that I swam. Occasionally, my coach did have to be a little bit creative. For example, I couldn't really hold a pool buoy between my legs. And so he made this like modified, I was actually thinking about it yesterday. It was like a dragging device where I would wrap this belt around my waist and he'd just have like a milk carton and he'd punctured holes in it.
How awesome is that?
Yeah, so there was some ways that we had to be creative, but it was
Yeah.
about giving myself the same challenges as everybody else in the squad, and which I loved. I loved the creativity behind it. And I did end up becoming the fastest person in my squad, and that was after a couple of years of hard work. But because I'd pushed myself so hard into becoming the fastest able-bodied swimmer, as a person with a disability, I ended up going to national championships and qualifying for like an Australian swim team at
As
the
an
age of
able-bodied.
14. No, 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 this is a Paralympic team. But I was only 14 years old and went to this World Championships in South Africa and won a silver medal. And I think people were really surprised. They're like, where has she been hiding, even though I was 14? But I think people saw a lot of potential in what I could achieve as a Paralympic athlete. I just raised the bar of my own expectations so incredibly high from such a young age and worked so hard that I'd almost put myself at the same level that you would find like a 20-year-old athlete that had been fully developed. But I was only 14 and I had this whole like runway ahead of me. So people were super excited. And then, yeah, found myself on a Paralympic team 2 years later. So it was kind of all by accident, really, just knowing what I could achieve and working really hard to achieve it. I just wanted to be the fastest kid in Frankston, Victoria, and
And
found
you
myself
were.
at
And you
Paralympics.
were.
Yeah, it was really weird.
Did you ever, was there any,
It's a beautiful story.
was there ever any with your coach, your first swim coach, was there any overt, how am I going to do this with a disabled athlete?
No, there wasn't. He was great. I remember my very first training session with him. We all had to pull ourselves up out of the water without using our knees. And so you kind of pull yourself up and you have to like land straight on your feet. It looks really cool when you do it, actually. I did it yesterday at swimming lessons with my son Felix, and I was like, still got it. Like I remember him pointing at me and saying, you need to do this as well, even though you've got one pin. He's like, you still need to get up on your foot and do the same as everyone else. And I was like, I love this. Like it was just someone who saw me.
And there was no doubt that you could do it.
There was absolutely no doubt. But I had a very different experience about, I would say, so in 2008, I changed to a different squad. And this coach had trained Olympians who was really well regarded on the Mornington Peninsula in Melbourne. And my very first training session, I'd been to the Beijing Paralympics. I was a Paralympian. I went to this training session for the first time with this new coach. And I walked in, I went up to him on pool deck and introduced myself. And he looked at me, he looked down at my prosthetic and he said, if you need to get out after the warm up, that's fine. And I was
Oh,
like, why would I need to get out after the, like, I was so confused. I didn't understand what he meant at the time. And I was like, why would I need to get out after the warm up? He was like, oh, in case you're tired and you can't finish the rest of the session. And I was like, that asshole. I was like,
so
What?
did he not know who you were?
no, back in
Oh,
2008, the Paralympic Games, I think it was on ABC, but it definitely wasn't at the
organized.
level in terms of the commercial partnerships that there are now and the broadcasting that there is now with Paralympics. So he had no idea who I was. And I remember once I realized that he said that to me because I had disability, I made sure I bought my Australian swim team cap with me the next time I went to training.
Love it.
And I was always the first one in and always the last one out. And I remember I would train so hard in that program that I would have this like headache that would stick around for like 3 hours after my session. I just pushed my body so hard. But that's probably the only experience that I ever really had with a
Has he ever
coach.
acknowledged it?
No, I haven't spoken. I think he was only coaching me for about 2 years and I haven't spoken to him
That's
since
a
I
long
left.
2 years when you
Yeah.
start like that.
But you know what? I kind of really enjoyed being that underestimated. It's like the warm up is only about 20 minutes of a 2.5 hour session, right? So I really enjoyed being that underestimated because I was like, I'm going to show you
Yeah. Did
exactly
did
what I
he
can
treat
do.
you any different after he saw what you could achieve? Did he treat you any different?
No, and Oh, he treated me differently from the first impression that he had of me, absolutely. But he didn't treat me any differently from anyone else. I think I showed him that I was
Oh
capable
yeah.
of a lot more than what he thought of. And after that, he was like, oh, okay.
Okay.
And
Yep.
I had something very similar actually only a couple of years ago. I moved down from Queensland to Sydney in the back end of my swimming career to train with Kate and Bronte Campbell. And these two athletes are the fastest freestylers that Australia has ever seen. And I had to trial for this training program. And at the beginning of the trial, I rang their coach. His name was Simon. And I said, hey, look, I'm really interested in joining your training program. And he's like, look, this is an Olympic training program, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, and you're a Paralympian. And I was like, very aware of that. Thank
Yeah.
you. And he's like, well, I don't traditionally take Paralympic swimmers, but I'll give you 1 week. And so I went to my very first training session with him, and I was training with Kate and Bronte. And he said to me, like, if you don't keep up with the time cycles, if you can't keep up with the girls, then I'm sorry, but we can't take you down to Sydney. It's just the way that it is. Like we have to treat you as we would any other Olympic swimmer. And I was like, okay, I just please give myself a chance. Just give me a chance to show you what I can do. I have never worked so hard. That 1 week, there was this one training session where I had to get out. I honestly thought I was having a heart attack. I had to get out and I was like laying on my side, groaning because I'd pushed myself that hard. And he walked up to me and he's like, right, you're in. He could, he saw that work ethic. And I trained with them for the next 3 years, the last 3 years of my swimming career. It was hard, all of my training sessions with them, I was only getting like 3 or 4 seconds rest between each set, between each effort. But I wanted to push myself in a way that I've never pushed myself before. And I remember going to the Tokyo Games being like, if I don't win any medals, I'm going to be so proud for the way that I have trained, for the way that I've pushed myself. I pushed Paralympic sport within swimming to a whole new level. And now we see lots of Paralympic athletes training in Olympic training programs. Traditionally, back then, it had never been done before. But I remember, yeah, I will never forget him just watching me swimming up and down, trying to keep up with these two of the fastest swimmers that Australia has ever seen. And he would go and tell other coaches about how hard I worked. And so he ended up becoming really proud that I was part of this program. And he was really proud at the work ethic more than anything.
You know
Because,
what I'm taking away from that is you're swimming with Kate and Bronte Campbell, the
yeah,
fastest women in Australia that have 2 legs.
yeah, it was hard.
You're keeping up. So imagine if you had 2 legs.
Well, that's it. I probably would have been a really great Olympic swimmer. It was really interesting training with those two actually because they were 100% sprinters and I was not a sprinter. I was more of a distance swimmer. And so I would find areas of my training where I could use my distance capabilities as a real strength. So if we had to do, for example, this probably won't make any sense to you, 10 300s, I would usually be faster than them. But it was when we had to do like the sprint work that they became faster than me. So we had to kind of, yeah, be really creative with different ways that we could showcase our strengths within training. I think
It's all about
we
creating.
learned exactly. We loved it. We loved that. I think that the girls, as well as Simon, as well as myself, all loved the challenge of how we fit it all together. And we ended up becoming an incredibly close squad. And I think the girls and Simon took a lot out of the experience of training a Paralympic athlete and having to be really creative with the way that we do things. I learned a lot about what it was like to train as an Olympian. You've got this body type that's very traditional and how you work with that. I was always very used to being very creative. It was fun, just trial and error for all of us.
Sounds like a lot of hard work.
It was, oh my God,
Do you know what
I can't put
I
into
get out of
words.
it? What I get out of this whole conversation is, yes, you're an amazing swimmer, you're an Olympian and all that, but listening to your story, all I see is so much strength and resilience to prove people wrong.
Yeah, it's a big
And
part
I
of having
and
a
I
disability.
absolutely love it because there's a lot of disabled people that they don't have a voice and
Mm.
they don't know how to advocate for themselves and they don't have that inner strength like you do. So one thing I will get out of this is when people listen, you provide hope because there is life with disability or your ability. And
Mm.
that's what I'm getting from the conversation. Yes, you're an amazing Olympian, but it's just the strength and resilience that's resonating with me on how, and the stubbornness, and I love it because it's like, I'll prove you wrong, like I love that because you're showing them that you're more than your disability,
I
and
think that's
that's so important.
I think that's something that's always kind of what I've always seen with people that have disabilities, though, is like, unfortunately, we do live in a world where we do have to prove people wrong
Yeah.
because they've gotten these misconceptions
Mm,
from somewhere, and it's something that we're always having to fight
mm,
against, is almost like having to prove our worth, to prove what we're capable of. And it sucks that we have to do that. But
yeah,
in turn, the silver lining in having to prove ourselves all the time is that we genuinely and generally push ourselves so much harder. And it's this superhuman characteristic where a lot of able-bodied people will see, their bar raised to X amount, but then people with disabilities have to push that so much higher just to be seen, just to be heard, just to be valued. And it all has to come from our own self-confidence. And we know what we're capable of. We know what our value is. It's like we have to show it to everybody else. But in doing so, we do have to work harder.
yeah.
And it's frustrating, but at the same time, you become so much stronger when you do that. And I just, if I reflect now, and people go, "Oh, what do you think you'd be like if you didn't have a disability?" I'd probably be pretty average. You know, I wouldn't have to push myself that hard. I'd be given a lot more opportunities, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't have to reach so deep within myself to pull out these incredible parts of myself that I always have to show other people. And I wouldn't have, if I never pulled those parts of myself out of myself, then I would never really know what I was truly capable of. And so I'm
I want
happy
to
about
know
it.
where this self-confidence comes from. Is that from your upbringing?
I think it's
That from
just from
you?
being so, I think it is from being so um, misrepresented my whole life, to be honest. Um, I think it's from my family. I think, a little bit of it's probably genetics, but I always had my twin sister next to me, right? When I was growing up. She was able-bodied and I had a disability. And she was almost like the person that I was always comparing myself to. I was always seeing her being given opportunities at school that I was never given. I was always seeing her treated differently in the way that I was being treated. People would talk to me really slowly and 3 octaves higher than her for some reason. I couldn't never understand why. And so I was always comparing myself to her, but I was always having her there. And, she was climbing trees with me. She was teaching me how to walk again. She was teaching me how to ride a bike. Whatever I wanted to do that was like her, she would help me find a way to get there.
Mm,
And despite what anybody else was saying in my life, despite the way that how anybody thought of me, I always had her to be like, we can see this challenge and we could figure it out together. And I think
That's really cry. That's
I,
beautiful.
I think she's been a big part of my self-confidence because she showed me that, no matter what, we can find our way to the other side of this challenge, or we can find our other way side to this issue. I learnt that from a really young age, and I took that into everything that I've ever done. And I think a lot of the self-confidence has been, yeah, just getting through to the other side time and time again, and knowing that, it does all come down to you in the end. You're going to need people to help you get through to the other side, but the decision to take a step forward ultimately always comes down to you. You can always take that step. Sometimes there might be something in the way, but you can then build yourself a little ladder and get over to the other side. And
We'll go around.
yeah, there's enjoyment in finding that challenge. So I'm really fortunate to have the mindset that I do have, but I think it's definitely because I had people believe in me from a really young age.
So
Just
you
beautiful.
mentioned your son Felix, was it?
Yeah, his name's Felix.
So is he an avid swimmer too? Is he going to give his mum a run for money? The
So
pool?
he's turned 1 in February, so
Oh, well,
he's
okay, he's not there yet.
no,
Not
but
there
I'm in
yet.
the process of it's actually nearly finished. For the last 4 months, putting a swimming pool in my backyard. And he started swimming lessons and he loves it. But he obviously
Water
doesn't
baby.
he does not understand the level that his mum was in terms of being a swimmer. He just loves swimming. But would I want him to be a swimmer? Probably not. It's a hard life. It's really, really hard, but and lots of early mornings. I just want him,
That mum would have to navigate to. You'll be
yes.
reliving your swimming career through your child.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens there. We'll see what he wants to do. But
Yeah,
like every parent says, just want him to be a happy little baby.
absolutely. Oh, sorry, I thought he may have been a little bit older, and like, yeah.
No, he's super young at the moment, is still trying to put like circles through circle holes and triangles through triangle
Oh, little
holes.
Dullum.
He's got
I love
he's got
that.
a bit of a way to go.
Oh.
As we start to wrap up, Ellie, not that I want to because I feel like you've got so much more to
Mm.
say. Where did you go after swimming? What happened when swimming finished?
So I finished swimming about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Um, it's been amazing, to be honest. I transitioned really well out of my swimming career because I was waking up at 3:30 every morning, and now I'm waking up at 6 because of my son, but it's still a good sleep in.
It's
I kind of just jumped straight into being a mum. Felix is, yeah, 1 year and 3 months old now. So that happened very quickly. I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. I went to the Olympics last year with Channel 9, but just really
You know
working.
what, Ellie? Sorry, that's how I recognized you, to be honest, because I watched
Uh,
it and I'm like, I know that face.
Yeah, probably from that. Just doing a bit of media work, a bit of television work, and I sit on a couple of boards now. So I sit on Paralympics Australia and the New South Wales Institute of Sport board, and that's been nice because it's kept me really well connected to the sporting community and very well connected to the athletes. But certainly, I suppose a little bit more influential in the way that things are governed and the way that things are managed. So I feel like I've stepped away from sport, but I'm still very much in it. I just get to enjoy a lot of other areas of my life that I never got to enjoy before.
What what are your hopes for the
Mm.
future for disabled people, for the disabled community, and the community as a whole?
Absolutely. I'm very optimistic about the future of people with disabilities. I've started to work a little bit in the disability employment space actually with a company called APM. They're a disability employment service provider. I see so many people wanting to make the world a better place for people with disabilities, but they're not really sure how to go about it. I mentioned that people's disability confidence isn't very high. We're really lucky now with social media, people with disabilities more able to share their stories and what their experiences are like, that people are learning more about disability language, opportunities, providing opportunities for people with disabilities as well. But in terms of what I hope to see for the future, I want to see it's always been the same, a world where disability isn't accepted, but it's expected as part
Yeah.
of
Oh, I love
diversity.
that.
Yeah, you know,
Not
it's been
accepted,
really
but accepted. I love that.
I think, when a lot of people think about inclusivity and accessibility as well, they always tend to think about the environment and what that's like. Is the environment accessible? But it's really about people's, I suppose, the culture within workplaces, about people's own ideas of what it means to have a disability. But most importantly, I think, accessibility should never really be, well, should never be an afterthought. And we are seeing that is becoming more and more common. But also, I want to see more authentic representation in media. We've just seen, Ali, can't remember what her last name is, being elected into politics. Want to see more of those leadership representation positions, and education as well. So I think most importantly, I just really love for our kids to grow up seeing disability as something that's just different, and that difference not necessarily anything to be ashamed of, that it's actually wonderful to be different. And so I know that I'm trying to teach Felix that already. He
Okay.
already knows how to take my leg off, and he's only
Oh,
one
good.
line.
He's helpful, Mum. He's helpful.
Being very helpful.
I just want to see disability as being a part of everyday life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyone, just as you said, accepted, expected.
Not accepted, but expected.
That's it. But just it to be normal, it to be
Yeah.
not scary, not different. It's just a part of life.
Well, it's been really interesting. I've got a 10-year-old niece, and she's grown up with having an auntie that has a disability. I'll never forget, I always share this story. I was standing out in a sheep paddock one day, and she runs out. She was like 3 with my leg charger, and she's trying to like plug me in to a paddock. Like, it's just so normal for her. But she's grown up with a lot of my friends who are Paralympians and obviously very wide range of disability. And it's incredible to be able to sit down with her for dinner now. She's 10 and she asks so many questions. She's so curious. She just knows the language. She was telling me recently that, and she's like, did you know that amputees, now people say they have limb difference? And I was like, how did you know that? And I didn't. It's just, I think that's why I'm so optimistic about the future, because I'm seeing people like her, even though she's been very heavily exposed to disability, but kids more and more are being exposed to disability through their curriculum at school. So yeah, I'm just going to see a natural progression into disability being expected as part of human diversity, which is nice.
Ellie, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. Have you got any final words you'd like to say to our listeners?
Well, I would just like to, once again, to thank you for letting me open up about what it's like to have a disability. I mentioned at the beginning, I have never been given an opportunity to, and I love listening to other people's experiences. But one final word that I would give to the listeners is that I just really want to reinforce that everyone that's listening to this podcast that knows someone that has a disability or has a disability themselves has so much more value than they will ever realize, and just hold on to that.
Ellie, thank you very much. It's been wonderful speaking with you.
You as well.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Ellie. Enjoy the rest of your day.